Automobilista 2 has just released 2 new DLC packs. One is simply an update to a circuit that we all know and love. The other one contains 6 cars, one of which is the V12 Aston Martin Valkyrie. Yes, this is the hypercar / GTP Aston Martin Valkyrie. And it's appearing in a sim racing title for only the second time. We of course got it first in Le Mans Ultimate very recently, and pretty soon after here it is in Automobilista 2. And it comes as part of a pack that, as I say, contains 5 other cars, so you're getting 6 cars, and the cost is only $9.99 or £8.99 in the UK, so that is pretty cheap. Less than a couple of quid per car, and obviously the highlight being this Valkyrie, it's a pretty exciting prospect. The pack is called Endurance Pack Part 3, and we'll talk a little bit more about the other cars a wee bit later on. The other pack that's also available as of literally last night is a 2025 version of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Now, the Nürburgring Nordschleife was already in the game, a 2020 version and also some historic versions, 1971 layouts and all sorts, but this is a new version with updated curbs, updated gravel traps, updated visuals, and it's available as a separate DLC pack. Again, we'll drive it a little bit later on and I'll talk about some of the nuances and the details there. But right now, let's just focus for a bit on this Aston Martin Valkyrie. Of course, the only currently competing hypercar or GTP car without a hybrid system. So there's no battery, it is just a naturally aspirated V12 engine. And I have to say straight away, I'm feeling on it. Like, I feel really, really natural driving this car. And I know it's Automobilista 2. There's always arguments about how natural or unnatural Automobilista 2 feels, and I kind of fall somewhere in the middle in general. I also believe that there are other sims that, for me, just handle a little bit more authentically in terms of how you actually feel the car and the tyres working in conjunction with the road. Oh, sorry, Lamborghini, I've just given you a willpower. But first impressions of this Aston Martin Valkyrie are pretty strong. I mean, I've only done 2 outlaps so far, not completed a decent lap yet, but I'm already feeling in the groove. The force feedback's feeling pretty nice. I do appreciate the way that the hypercars, the GTP cars work in this game anyway, and this feels like it's going to be no different. Of course, the first thing you're going to think about as well with the Aston Martin is the sound. Now, from the cockpit, this V12 engine is not going to be quite as extreme as it sounds from external. Now, I'm still obviously to watch a replay, so I don't know yet how it sounds externally, but you may have seen a replay by this point. If not, we'll play you a little replay now. Well, I've spun off anyway, and I put it in the wall, so I might as well check the replay myself. Oh. Screaming over the hill. Now, you also may have noticed the car I'm driving has the blue Heart of Racing livery that is actually used in IMSA, but not quite. And that's because even though the livery has apparently, according to the studio, been created and is ready to go, they're still waiting on some final confirmation and the green light to actually put it into the game, so that should be added in future. But obviously right now we've just kind of got an IMSA Thor-inspired livery on the car. And that's fine. There are also a couple of the AMR dark green inspired liveries, and there's a kind of Gulf inspired livery as well, which is pretty cool. Obviously, I'm driving right now multi-class, that's why you've got LMP2 in front of me and a GT3 car ahead. And that is one of the big strengths of AMS2, obviously the IMSA content. Being able to actually drive these GTP machines around official IMSA circuits, of course, in North America. That's what sets this apart from Le Mans Ultimate, which is, of course, focused on the World Endurance Championship. And now we can, of course, have an opportunity to drive this Aston Martin with the V12 around some of these epic American circuits, like Road America, which I'm driving around right now. A bit of a twitch for the Lambo. We've got Road Atlanta. You've got Watkins Glen, Long Beach, Laguna, all of these places that the cars actually do race in real life. Visually speaking, this Aston Martin looks stunning. Very, very familiar in terms of the cockpit, the steering wheel, how that looks. It all matches up very closely with Le Mans Ultimate, which is realistic. You've also got the lights on the dashboard to signify when you're losing traction, when you're locking up the brakes. And it tells you whether you're locking the fronts or rears. And of course, being a naturally aspirated engine, there is no hybrid system, and that is applied here. So when I change the engine mode, which would change it on a hybrid vehicle, it doesn't actually do anything in this car. So that's done properly. I mean, it's simplified, so it should be done properly, but it is. Ooh, traffic. But you can change the brake bias, you can change the traction control number, although again it's a simplified setting. You can change the front and rear anti-roll bars. Whoa! So there are lots of electronics that you can affect. My goodness. I do love multi-class, but it's a bit chaotic. We actually did a video recently comparing hypercar implementation across the whole of sim racing, really, looking at who does it best, and AMS2 finished very, very high up the list. Pretty much, I would say, second place behind Le Mans Ultimate in terms of the actual implementation of how these machines work and how realistic they are. Really getting into a flow now. Feels stable under braking. Pretty stable on turning, although I did obviously lose the rear earlier on. And it's not bad in traction either. I've got traction control fairly high. You can see there, oh, I am limited eventually, but the grip keeps on coming, and it just lets go very, very late on. But the car's feeling super natural, I would say, and it's actually relatively easy to drive. I thought it would be a little bit more lethal than this. It was interesting as well because Le Mans Ultimate was sort of similar. Like, the car wasn't quite as aggressive and snappy as I was almost expecting it. Oh, that's contact, sorry about that. It was just a little bit more of a comfortable driving experience. Generally, it was tending towards understeer, whereas this one feels pretty balanced, to be honest. Like, I don't think it's too understeery or oversteery on the default setup. I've got quite a lot of grip. Obviously, you know, I'm not yet pushing the limits by any stretch. Isn't it great to have a near full class of IMSA GTP cars? I mean, yes, we're still missing the Acura, but now that we have the Aston Martin, it really does feel close to what I would say a 2025 grid should feel like. Getting underway, it's a bad start. We've got the Porsches coming up behind us. We'll defend the inside line. Ooh, okay. Cold brakes, cold brakes. Sorry, Caddy. I'm glad this is AI racing. Obviously, doing a longer race against the AI, you really get into the mix with traffic. But I do feel like that's something that could still be improved, and how the AI actually behave in traffic and how they get through. It has been worked on, and it has been improved since the IMSA content first launched, but I think there's still more room to go. The other thing I'm really curious to see is how this Aston Martin Valkyrie behaves over big curbs, because on Le Mans Ultimate I noticed around the likes of Monza, the Ascari chicane, the Aston was pretty lethal over the big curbs. You had to be very careful. It's kind of got similar characteristics, as I was saying earlier, in terms of the understeer, oversteer to Le Mans Ultimate, although maybe it's a bit more balanced on default setup here. There's always discussions about how AMS2 feels as a sim. It's obviously come a long way. If you're watching this video, you most likely enjoy AMS2. I still feel like, driving-wise, it's just not quite there for me with the very best there is in terms of realism and in terms of the connection to the road, primarily. And this Aston Martin really is credit to the work that they've put in, because honestly, it feels super natural so far to drive, and that's not always been the case with new cars in AMS2. And I just feel like I'm getting a really decent, authentic hypercar experience. Again, I don't feel quite as much weightiness as the likes of Le Mans Ultimate. Weightiness obviously isn't everything, it's more about detail and tyre connection to the road, but it's really, really decent, let's say. And of course, with AMS2 simulating wet weather, full course yellows, all of these things, it just becomes a very, very strong IMSA simulator. It already was. The Aston just adds a cherry on top of the cake. Ooh. Sorry, Lambo. And I've lost it. Sorry, me. Sorry, you, for watching this horror show. With the sun setting, I've got a time multiplier on, so it should get a bit darker towards the end of this race. We've only got a couple of laps left. I don't know if I'll be able to catch the pack in front, but I will do my best. I'll use this lap to talk about the other cars that come as part of this DLC pack. It's very Aston Martin heavy, because you also get the 2020 Aston Martin Vantage GTE car, so it brings the GTE class from 3 up to 4 cars, and you get the GT3 Vantage Evo, so the most recent facelifted version of the Vantage, which is great to see. Those two, plus the Valkyrie, gives us 3 modern Aston Martin top-level endurance cars, let's say. But then you also get the GT4 Aston Martin Vantage, and then moving away from Aston Martin, we get the Alpine A110 GT4 car as well, and it's the Evo spec for that, so ooh, that's sketchy. I'm not going to drive all of these cars in this video, but I would urge you to check out the TraxionGG website for all of the information on these vehicles and on the recent DLC packs in general. Coming to the end of the race, we just about caught the pack in front. Big fan of the Valkyrie. Big fan of the Valkyrie. I think this has been implemented very, very well from Reiza. I know it's boring because everyone's going to say this about this car, and it's kind of, I guess, predictable, but this might be my new favourite car in the game. Might be. So we're going to finish up with a quick drive on the new version of the Nordschleife, and as you can see, 2025 version, different photo, but it's still the same layout, so we're going to have to really dive into it to see what the differences are. I should also mention that it's not just the Nordschleife that gets a 2025 layout, there's also a new 2025 GP layout and a combined 24-hour layout with the Grand Prix circuit and the Nordschleife. And for those of you that own the 2020 DLC already for the Nürburgring Nordschleife, you will receive a free update with updated artwork development and the main terrain 3D mesh update that's also happening with the 2025 version, so you will get some new stuff at least for free. And in terms of the cars, here is a quick look at the two new GT4 cars. So there's your Vantage and your Alpine. You've obviously got the new GT3 Evo there as well, and then the GTE car, the Aston Martin Vantage. There it is, bringing it up to 4. However, I did say that there were 6 cars as part of this DLC pack, and anyone who was paying very close attention may have noticed I've only spoken about 5 cars. And that is because there is also a Ligier. From the Ligier European series, there is the Ligier JS2R. Now, this is an interesting one, and I thought it was a cool curveball to cover because it's not a car that's used in any sort of categorized series other than Ligier's own series, right? So it's not in GT4 or GT3 or anything like that. It's a specially built car for a specific series. Now, the European series also has a Ligier prototype, the JSP4, and is more of a prototype. Now, Reiza have actually said that for now, the sole contender in the new Ligier European series on this game is this car. Watch this space. So that means that we can kind of put 2 and 2 together and say that there's a good chance the JSP4 will also come to Automobilista 2 at some point. We're going to drive this car around the 2025 version of the Nordschleife just to get a feel for it. Now, as we start driving around here, there were a couple of other things that I should have mentioned regarding Endurance Pack Part 3. The first of which is not part of any existing season pass, although if you have the Founders Pass that gets you every single bit of content ever on AMS2, then please check the game, because the likelihood is you will probably have it without having to buy anything. But all of the other cars in this pack, aside from this Ligier, are also now available as part of an IMSA-specific DLC pack, which, by the way, includes a lot of other older IMSA content not part of this new pack, and went on sale recently for £42.98. This price, by the way, includes a current 50% discount, so if you're interested, get it while it's cheap. If you own some of the IMSA stuff already, this IMSA-specific pack will be reduced to reflect that, so it's a bit confusing because, of course, you have the Endurance pack itself, and then you have the IMSA stuff, and yeah, it's complicated, so the best thing I can say really is check out the Reiza forums for any information on that, and obviously keep an eye on the Traxion website, maybe even check the comments in this video, because some people might have taken the time to explain it or clarify things that we're uncertain about. So one sector in the Ligier, and it feels like a proper purpose-built race car as it is. It's actually, I would say, more grippy than I maybe expected. Sounds okay, not amazing. I'm going to keep an eye on the Nordschleife for this particular section though, because this all looks different to the 2020 version. We'll bring up some comparisons where relevant on screen. And one of the big differences should be the curb up here. Is the big curb there? Yes. So that big curb on the left was pretty much flat before, and that's a big talking point about the Nordschleife in recent times, so that they have simulated that well. The big curb is there. I didn't quite hit it properly, but you shouldn't hit it properly these days, so that's a good start. But those of you watching who are massive Nordschleife fans and drive laps and all sorts of different sims will hopefully be able to spot some of the bigger differences between the two. I'm not someone who pays too much attention to the, whether the gravel's slightly different on the outside of this corner or whether certain bits of runoff feel different, so I can't off the top of my head tell you by driving around exactly how good this is, but it should be a very up-to-date version of the track. Hopefully the most up-to-date in sim racing, given it's just released, and according to the studio, that's what we have here, so I did say earlier as well that there was already a paid DLC pack for the Nürburgring Nordschleife, which included classic layouts and all sorts of other Grand Prix related layouts. Now, I guess that's a little bit contentious because people who have already paid for the Nürburgring Nordschleife will have to pay again the same amount on top, which is $7.99 or £6.99 for the 2025 version of the circuit. And yeah, I can imagine if you've already bought the Nürburgring DLC pack, you'd be a little bit disappointed that you're going to have to pay again to get the more up-to-date one. However, to just give you an understanding of why that might be, it's very expensive to develop new tracks. From what we can pick up from what Reiza have said on their official forums, it's upwards of 6 figures to get the Nürburgring licensing sorted. And obviously getting the scans and doing whatever you need to do to update the circuit is an expensive process, so that money needs to be recuperated somehow, and I'm sure that'll be why you're having to pay once again for an updated version of the circuit. So it's not plain and simple really. Ow. The track surface is looking super smooth. Everything's looking clean. I can definitely feel that it's different from the 2020 version, which I drove very recently. I should also mention that further layouts are intended to be added with this pack at a later date, so we should see the kind of Joker lap version of the 24-hour course where you can actually cut between the Grand Prix layout and, or basically the end of the Grand Prix layout and the start of the Grand Prix layout to restart a lap. So that should be added at some point. And also the tourist route as well, which is basically what you get to experience if you go to the Nordschleife as a tourist and drive onto the circuit through the toll booths and everything. That particular layout should also be added in future as well. But obviously we'll keep you up to date with that on the Traxion website. I'm actually really enjoying the Ligier though. I'd say it feels sort of like an alternative to a GT4 car. I mean, I haven't driven those back to back to really explain the differences clearly, but this feels a little bit more racy than a GT4 car. It feels a little bit more, I don't know, planted, a bit more purposeful. Be very intrigued to see what the lap time differences would be. And I haven't researched which would probably be quicker around a lap. But I do always like seeing new interesting cars in racing games that aren't implemented into other popular titles. Because, I mean, so many cars are ubiquitous across all the big series, so having like a European Series Ligier, that's a big lockup. It's cool to see. And obviously if we get the prototype as well in future, that would be wicked. No confirmation of that, of course, just hope. We made it to the end of our lap. One other thing I have noticed with this just now is when you try to look behind you, yeah, that doesn't look finished to me. I don't know if that's just a me problem, but yeah, that's maybe a bug that needs fixed, let's say. But that's going to end things for this quick first look at the new AMS2 DLC. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of it. Will you be picking up the DLC? It's pretty well priced, I would say, all things considered, and I'm really impressed with the 2 cars that I've driven so far. Of course, it's very much first impressions. I've not given them a proper big test, but I have to say, signs are good. Do leave us a like if you've enjoyed the video and you want to see more Automobilista 2 content in future. Subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss that when it happens. But until next time, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.